Everyone loves a good mystery, and in the great big world around us, there are many mysterious enigmas just waiting to be explored and explained. I'm your host, Leah.
I think I'm Phil.
And I'm Steve. Sit back and relax as we tell you about some of the most intriguing, unsolved, and a few solved mysteries that we could find.
If you have an appetite for the strange and bizarre, then pull up a chair and grab a spoon for another intriguing serving of Remnant Stew. Remnant Stew is gluten-free, organic, made from all natural, free-range ingredients, and guaranteed to provide the recommended daily serving of curiosity.
Well, now, before we get into our main stories today, let's take a look at the calendar. And this is a great time of year. I love this time of year.
Yay, the calendar.
It's my favorite time of year.
This coming Wednesday, November the 24th, this is a great holiday, National Jukebox Day. That's right, National Jukebox Day seeks to promote and celebrate the jukebox. The original jukebox was a coin-operated musical device that played specific records. Today, there are digital jukeboxes modeled after the classic design. The day acknowledges the importance of the jukebox in bringing music into people's lives. It encourages playing nostalgic music and appreciating how far the jukebox has come as a musical device. National Jukebox Day was started in 2017 by music corporation Touch Tunes. It's observed annually now on the day before Thanksgiving. What a great way to...
Yeah.
When you're starting to cook up all the Thanksgiving food, you can listen to some tunes on a jukebox.
And that is such a weird word, jukebox.
I think juke was a 50s word for dance, some kind of a dance craze.
That makes
jukebox.
sense. But I don't think anybody says it that way. Everybody calls it a jute box.
Jute box. Okay, maybe in Kentucky that's what they did it. I don't know.
Hey, now.
Well, of course, this Thursday, November 25th, is Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving Day is a celebration of giving thanks for the harvest and blessings of the past year. It's a day of giving thanks to God for his many blessings and expressing our gratitude to friends and family members. It's celebrated in the United States on Thanksgiving Day. It goes back to the Reformation period and is accompanied by prayers, special ceremonies, and feasts.
So much food.
Right.
Food.
Exactly. Thanksgiving is observed on the fourth Thursday in November each year.
Yeah, that's right. So
but wait a minute.
Abraham Lincoln is the one that kind of set that custom of the fourth Thursday. But in 1939, during the Great Depression, the fourth Thursday was on November 30th, and FDR was really concerned about whether or not retail sales, if that wasn't going to be enough time for retail sales. So he pushed Thanksgiving back a week, but on a third Thursday, and it really ticked people off.
Messed people up, didn't it?
It did. Like, they started calling it Franksgiving, and not in a good tone of voice, okay? And so, and that was in 1939. So 1941, Congress moved it back.
Right.
So, but it is my favorite holiday.
Now, you mentioned Abraham Lincoln. For many years, southern states wouldn't celebrate Thanksgiving. They referred to it as a Yankee holiday, but by the time World War II came around, that had kind of died off.
Well, I'm really glad we embraced it, because I embrace it. I put on my stretchy pants.
Now, I have a really good Thanksgiving story that I heard about 10 years ago. I was fortunate to be part of a group that was taking a group of World War II veterans on these honor trips, that they were taking them on.
Right.
Time.
My father-in-law went on the very first one that our local school did. One
of the veterans, I met a gentleman named Mr. Richards, who was living in Huntsville, Texas at the time. He told me really a fascinating story, and I'd like to share it here. He was telling me that he was in Italy during the war and was taken prisoner of war and taken to a large prison camp in the eastern part of Germany. After about 2 weeks, he said they took him and about 20 others to a large farm, and he said he spent the rest of the war working on that farm, doing farm labor. Well, he said one of the 21 gentlemen that were there taken to the camp was a Jewish fellow from Brooklyn. And the other prisoners all decided that they wouldn't let the Germans get the Jewish fellow alone. They were afraid of what they might do with him if the guards got him by himself. So they always had 3 or 4 other people working around him, with farm implements. So there was a little bit of
Right.
protection going on there.
Right.
But then one day, one of the guards came running out of the guardhouse, shouting this Jewish fellow's name, and he said, "Get out here! I'm going to kill you now." And all 20 of the other guys surrounded the Jewish fellow. They made him duck down right in the middle. And the guard had his pistol drawn. He was running around. He had pointed his pistol at their heads. He said, "You move or I'll shoot you too." But they didn't move.
Oh, wow.
And this went on for a minute or two. And then a couple of other guards came out and they dragged this guard back to the guardhouse. Later on, they found that he had just learned that his parents had died in a bombing raid. And so they were so conditioned to blame the Jews for all of their problems, he was going to come out and take his vengeance on this particular Jewish fellow.
Oh, wow.
Well, Mr. Richards told me that for the next 50 years, every year on Thanksgiving, he would get a call from Brooklyn, New York, from this Jewish fellow. Not only him, but all the other 20, he would call and thank them for saving his life. So,
oh, wow.
Always
What a
been
good story.
That's amazing.
one of my favorite Thanksgiving stories. Well, of course, this Friday, then, the 26th, is Black Friday. Do you get out and do much of the Black Friday shopping?
Absolutely not. No. And I find it really weird that, like, you spend Thanksgiving being thankful
Right.
and all of that, and then the next day it's avarice,
Right.
But no,
Well,
I wouldn't. I stay at home.
And now it starts after 6.
Right, on Thursday night.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
I will
Whatever.
admit that I have done it a few times. If there's something that's that I'm really interested in, either for me or for one of the grandkids.
You've
or something
camped
like
out
that.
at Best Buy, haven't you?
Well, I haven't
Pitched a
actually
tent.
camped out, but I've gone to Walmart earlier than 6:00 to be there when the 6:00 sales
Oh, wow.
start, to be one of the first to grab one of the items that I'm interested in. So yeah, I have done that, and of course Saturday is Small Business Saturday, so we want to make sure you support your small businesses in your area.
We do have a list, of indie bookstores.
Yeah, independent
and we
bookstores,
have
especially.
participated
Yes.
in that ourselves.
Exactly. You might not know that this Sunday, November 28th, is National French Toast Day.
Because that's what you need.
You haven't had enough to eat at Thanksgiving.
When
Yeah.
you're tired of turkey,
Right.
Turkey and pumpkin
There
pie.
you
Then
go.
comes the French toast.
Hey, put some chicken on it.
That may be gravy, is what I was thinking. But National French Toast Day seeks to promote the sweet, savory bread. French toast is a popular breakfast dish that is made by soaking sliced bread in eggs or milk and then frying it. There's just a great combination of things right there with some powdered sugar on top.
Powdered sugar, that's right.
National French Toast Day seems to have started in 2016 as a promotion for French toast. It's observed annually on November 28th, so enjoy some French toast this Sunday. Well, Leah, people love mysteries.
Yes.
There's no doubt about that. There's just something deliciously intriguing about an unsolved mystery. I recently came across an excellent article in ReadersDigest.com titled 19 of the Strangest Unsolved Mysteries of All Times. The article is written by a very talented young journalist named Lauren Kahn, C-A-H-N, and we here at Remnant Stew are very grateful to Ms. Kahn for granting us permission to quote directly from her fine article, so thank you very much.
Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you.
In this article, Ms. Kahn touches on some well-known mysteries, such as Area 51 and D.B. Cooper. We've talked about them before in our podcast. But we're going to focus on some of the lesser-known mysteries that she brings up, and you'll hear her articles sprinkled throughout this podcast. The first one that we're going to mention is about the incident at Dyatlov Pass. On the first night of February 1959, 9 ski hikers died mysteriously in the mountains of what is now Russia. The night of the incident, the group had set up camp on a slope, enjoyed dinner, and prepared for sleep. But something went catastrophically wrong because the group never returned. On February 26, searchers found the hikers' abandoned tent, which had been ripped open from the inside. Surrounding the area were footprints left by the group. Some were wearing socks, some were wearing one shoe, some were barefoot, all of which continued to the edge of a nearby wood. That's where the first 2 bodies were found, shoeless and wearing only underwear. The scene bore marks of death by hypothermia, But as medical examiners inventoried the bodies, as well as the other 7 which were discovered over the following months, hypothermia was no longer an option. Didn't seem to make sense. In fact, the evidence made no sense at all. One body had evidence of a blunt force trauma consistent with a brutal assault. Another had third-degree burns. One had been vomiting blood. One was missing a tongue, and some of their clothing was found to be radioactive. Theories floated, including KGB interference.
Of course, why not? You know,
that's one I would lean toward immediately, I think. Drug overdoses, UFO. That was the wrong episode, right?
Of course, right. It's always UFOs.
It's always them aliens.
Right. Gravity anomalies. Yeah, that's a little strange one. And the Russian version of the Yeti. Recently, a documentary filmmaker presented a theory involving a terrifying but real phenomena called infrasound, in which the wind interacts with the topography to create a barely audible hum that can nevertheless induce powerful feelings of nausea, panic, dread, chills, nervousness, raised heartbeat rate, and breathing difficulties. Well, kind of like being in love, I think, too. But anyway. The only consensus remains that whatever happened involved an overwhelming and possibly inhuman force. So what do you think about that, Leah?
Well, okay, so I have read and watched and listened and all of this kind of stuff about the Dyatlov Pass.
Right.
And some of the bodies did have severe trauma, like their heads were crushed,
right.
Their ribs were crushed, things like that. And some of them looked as if they had hypothermia. And so it was a mystery for a long, long time. But actually, this mystery has been solved. In one of the weirdest ways.
Of course, why not?
Okay, so one of the theories was that had been considered and then thrown out was that there was an avalanche. And so their tent being cut from the inside, they heard the avalanche coming. They rushed to get out. Some of them succumbed to the avalanche, and some of them escaped and died of hypothermia later. But it was thrown out because of the severe trauma that these bodies underwent. They're like, no avalanche can do that. However, Johann, I think his name is Gaume, Gaume, head of a Swiss Federal Technical Institute named the Snow Avalanche Simulator Laboratory.
Oh, nice.
There's a good job there.
Right? Okay, so he went to the movies. And I suppose with a kid. I don't know if he went alone.
Probably with his daughter, I'm guessing.
Yeah,
Probably
he went with a kid because anything else would be creepy.
Right.
Who knows? Me and my husband go see Disney movies, but he went to go see the Disney movie Frozen.
Let it go.
And he was really struck by the computer animation of an avalanche.
Right.
And so he reached out to the animators and asked for the code that they used to simulate the avalanche.
Okay.
Gaume then modified the code for his own avalanche simulation models to test what impact avalanches could have on the human body. And the simulation that he ran showed that it actually could. And he says, quote, "It could handily break the ribs and skulls of people in its path."
Wow.
Oh, wow.
A lot of power in that.
So thanks to a kids' movie, scientists now accept that the hikers likely died from an avalanche, some of them, and the others died of hypothermia after the avalanche covered their tents and everything else. And it's really hard. Okay, so you say that some of these hikers were found months later. It's because they were covered in snow.
Right. And maybe carried off down the slope, too.
Yeah.
Further down.
Yeah. So that is the accepted
interesting
solving of that mystery.
All right. Well, maybe there's another movie that can help us with this next one. In December, now you've probably heard this one. This has made the news more recently. In December of 2016, a CIA officer checked into the American Embassy's health office in Havana, Cuba, suffering from nausea, headaches, and dizziness. Days later, 2 more CIA officers reported similar ailments. By late 2018, the number grew to 26 Americans and 13 Canadians experiencing nausea, hearing loss, vertigo, nosebleeds, and focusing issues. In all cases, victims claimed that the symptoms were triggered by a strange noise that they heard at their homes or hotel rooms. One person said the noise was high-pitched. Another described it as a beam of sound pointed into their room. Some insisted that the noise more closely resembled marbles rolling along the floor. The illness confused medical experts. Doctors at the University of Pennsylvania who examined some of the victims diagnosed concussion-like symptoms but found no signs that they'd suffered concussions. We know what you must be thinking. The Cuban government, they're up to something, right? The Cubans vehemently deny that they're responsible, and many American investigators believe them.
It's the KGB.
That's what I was thinking, too. That's because they still don't know who or what made the victim sick. Was it a new type of weapon? Well, the CIA claims that it doesn't know of any weaponry that could cause these symptoms, but honestly, would they tell us if they did?
Right.
Nope.
Recordings of the sounds from some of the victims only added to the confusion. Two scientists who studied the recordings believe they captured the sound of lovelorn male crickets.
Because that's sickening.
Right.
I tell you.
So you're saying that they have to go see A Bug's Life to find out the fix for that one?
I'm thinking you're onto something. One of the scientists, Alexander Stubbs of the University of California, Berkeley, says the insects are incredibly loud. Quote, you can hear them from inside a diesel truck going 40 miles an hour down the highway.
That means they're right next to you.
Evidently, they have researched this out at Cal Berkeley, among other things. Still, the scientists had no idea why the sounds might lead to illness in humans. Maybe it was nerves, some people conclude, because Cuba is a high-threat, high-stress post. A former embassy official told ProPublica.org, diplomats are warned that, quote, there will be surveillance, there will be listening devices in your house, probably in your car, and for some people, that puts them in a high-stress mentality, in a threat anticipation mode, which is true.
I can imagine, yeah, that's legit.
But then how do you explain what happened in China? In May 2018, an American posted in the consulate in Guangzhou was diagnosed with, get ready for it, the very same mysterious illness. Ultimately, 15 Americans were evacuated. Couldn't be any connection at all between the Cubans and the Chinese, now could there?
Nope, KGB.
Nope. While the seemingly airborne cause of these brain injuries is still a mystery, the fallout is clear. The Americans removed 60% of their diplomats from Cuba and expelled 15 Cuban diplomats from Washington, D.C. The mysterious sound may well be the opening shots of a new kind of Cold War using sound beam technology.
Well, I think there's capabilities,
right?
Possibilities there.
It seems too random to be the cricket theory, I'm thinking.
Yeah, I don't know that they migrate that far.
Yeah. Now, this is an interesting article. I'd never heard of this before. It comes to us from Brazil, still from the same article from Ms. Khan. But it's not unusual to find junk in Brazil's Guanabara Bay. But what Robert Marks unearthed there in 1982 was an unusual kind of foreign matter. In an underwater field the size of 3 tennis courts located 15 miles from shore lay the remains of some 200 Roman ceramic jars.
Okay.
A few fully intact. According to Marks, he's a professional treasury hunter. The jars, I should say he's a professional treasure hunter.
Treasure hunter.
Yeah. The jars appeared to be twin-handled amphorae that were used to transport goods such as grain and wine in the 3rd century by the Romans. But how did they get there? First Europeans didn't reach Brazil until the year 1500, and these were from 1,200 years before that. The Romans, who traded primarily in the Mediterranean port cities in the Middle East, had little incentive to invest in ships that could cross oceans. However, they did sail as far as India. Perhaps some untrained navigator lost his way in a storm, or maybe mutineers steered the ship westward. We may never know, nor are we likely to uncover more evidence. Brazil closed the Bay of Jars to further research in 1983 in an effort to deter looters, is what it said.
Right.
However, Marx claims the government didn't want the area explored because finding Roman-era artifacts would mean that contrary to Brazil's official history, the Portuguese were not the first Europeans to reach the country. I'm not really sure what big difference it makes.
It didn't necessarily mean that they were alive when they
got there.
Close to there.
For sure. And, the Portuguese kind of are descendant of the Latin Romans anyway, so, it could have come from Portugal, but they're Romanesque. So, anyhow, that if it's the truth, it's still resting 100 feet under the sea.
Wow, that's interesting. Like, and professional treasure hunter. Like, I want that on my resume. Okay, so I have a story for you. During World War II, many of our ships had been sunk off the West Coast. So there were blimps deployed to search out enemy vessels. Early on the morning of Sunday, August 16th, 1942, a U.S. Navy blimp prepared to take off from Treasure Island in San Francisco Bay. Mm-hmm. The experienced pilots were 27-year-old Lieutenant Ernest Cody and 32-year-old Ensign Charles Adams. A third man, aviation machinist mate Riley Hill, was to be aboard, but at the last minute was inexplicably told to leave the ship. He thinks, I think they just told him he wasn't given a reason or whatever.
We know where we're going. We don't need no navigators.
But he thinks when they asked him, he said it was probably due to heavy moisture weighing down the ship, making it unsafe for the three men to be on board.
That makes sense.
The blimp's mission was to locate and sink, which is interesting. I didn't realize that blimps actually carried munitions, but to locate and sink any Japanese submarines spotted off the coast of San Francisco. So the first part of the mission went smoothly and without incident. An hour and a half after takeoff at 7:38 a.m., Lieutenant Cody radioed squadron headquarters at Moffett Field. He stated that he was positioned 3 miles east of the Farallon Islands. 4 minutes later, he called again, stating that he was investigating a suspicious oil slick. That was the last time the crew was ever heard from. The crew was to report in hourly, but 3 hours had passed with radio silence. Then a message came in from San Francisco Shore Patrol. A blimp was seen crashing into a golf course next to the beach, releasing its depth charges.
Wow.
The deflating blimp was 8 miles off course and headed toward Daly City, where it dragged its gondola across the roof of a house. And thankfully, it had, it wasn't letting off any more
depth charges.
But it dragged across this house, and then it landed in the street nearby. No one on the ground was injured, thankfully, but the crew was missing.
They weren't in the gondola.
They were not in the gondola. A search of the gondola revealed that the door was latched open, the safety bar was no longer in place, and 2 life jackets were missing. The blimp was seen during its mission by many ships and planes, some close enough to even see the pilots inside. But no one saw any men drop from the airship, and no one was found to be floating in the sea.
Wow.
There was some speculation that the pilots may have spotted a Japanese ship, dropped down to take a closer look, and then was taken prisoner. Or that there was a malfunction and the men climbed outside the ship to do repairs and then fell to their death. Either way, the 2 men were never seen again, and on August 17th, 1943, both men were officially presumed dead. And this is known as the ghost blimp.
Ghost blimp. That's
Ghost blimp.
Interesting
So
story.
I got my info from Unsolved Mysteries Wiki and History.net.
Yeah, that's interesting. I remember when you say blimp, it makes me think when I was in the 5th grade, a blimp flew over our town, and they let us out of school to look at it,
Well, and honestly, they took this blimp, they fixed it, because it was deflating. They fixed it, and they gave it to, or sold it, or whatever, to Goodyear. So it continued.
So it was one of the Goodyear blimps. Then,
so it became one of the Goodyear blimps.
Yeah. Well, now back to, here's another piece from Ms. Kahn's article. This one is about the Voynich manuscript. This is really strange.
Yeah, I've heard about this one.
The Voynich manuscript is a roughly 250-page book written in an entirely unknown language or writing system. It's been carbon dated back to the 1400s.
So is it Doodle Book?
Something like that. It includes illustrations of plants that don't resemble any known species. It's named for the Polish book dealer who purchased it in 1912. It's believed to have been intended as a medical text. It was first confirmed owner was George Barish, Baresch, who lived from 1585 to 1662. He was an alchemist from Prague who discovered it, quote, taking up space uselessly in his library. Barash tried to investigate the manuscript's origin, but to no avail. The manuscript changed hands for centuries until it was purchased by Voynich who posited that it was authored by Albertus Magnus, an alchemist, or Roger Bacon, an early scientist. However, some believe that Voynich fabricated the manuscript and its history all by himself.
Because 250 pages, that's quite a hoax.
That's a lot of hoax, yeah.
That's elaborate.
Various other hoaxes have been proposed over the years. Of course, that wouldn't explain the carbon dating of the paper and the ink centuries after its first alleged discovery. The Voynich manuscript remains as impenetrable and inexplicable as ever.
That's right. And there's all these botany drawings in there.
Right.
Some of plants that don't exist.
So they existed in somebody's mind, perhaps.
and the writing in there, when you're deciphering code, you look for like the letter
Patterns.
E or something. You look for double letters and things like that. And no one has ever been able to decipher it. They kind of come to the conclusion that it's just
somebody did it as a joke.
Yeah,
this is gibberish.
They're really bored.
It looks like gibberish, but it's a very elaborate hoax, if that's what it is. Somebody was very committed.
Now, this next mystery is kind of a sad one, very sad one, actually. George and Jean Sodder, Sodder, who were from West Virginia, were forced to cope not only with the immeasurable loss of their children, but also with the mysterious circumstance surrounding that loss. After the Sodder home burned to the ground the night before Christmas in 1945, 5 of the 10 Sodder children were still alive and accounted for. But what about the other 5? From all accounts, it would seem that they had vanished into thin air. Notice how we don't say vanished into smoke. That's because in the ruins of the fire, 0 physical evidence of the children could be found, which is virtually impossible from a scientific standpoint. But that wasn't all that smelled off about the events of that night. Apparently, George tried to save the children, who he believed were still trapped inside, by using his coal truck, but it was strangely inoperable. Also, the phone lines to the house had been found to have been cut. And then later, a woman claimed to have seen all 5 missing children peering from a passing car while the fire was still in progress. And a different woman at a Charleston, West Virginia hotel claimed that she saw the children's photos in a newspaper, said that she had seen 4 of the 5 a week after the fire. The children were accompanied by 2 women and 2 men, all of Italian extraction, she said in a statement. I tried to talk to the children in a friendly manner, but the men appeared hostile and wouldn't allow it. The Sodder family theorized that the children had been kidnapped, perhaps in an attempt to extort money, perhaps to coerce George into joining the local mafia, because the Sodder family were Italian immigrants, or perhaps in retaliation for George's outspoken criticism of Mussolini and Italy's fascist government. Well, from the 1950s until Jeannie Sodder's death in the late 1980s, the Sodder family maintained a billboard on State Route 16 with pictures of the 5 vanished children and offering a reward for information. The last known of the surviving Sodder children, Sylvia, one of the 5 that survived the fire that wasn't taken, she still doesn't believe her siblings perished in the fire. So what happened to the Sodder children, it's still unknown to this day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that is a sad one.
Now we come to a strange archaeological formation over in Scotland that seems to be drawing dogs to jump off. We're talking about a bridge. It's called the Overtown Bridge near Dumbarton, Scotland, and it seems to call dogs to leap to their death.
Oh, no.
This is a perfect spot for unsolved mysteries, I suppose. Since the early 1960s, some 50 canines have perished, and hundreds more have jumped but survived, and some have actually returned for a second leap onto the jagged rocks 50 feet below.
Isn't that crazy?
The Scottish Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals has sent representatives to investigate, but to no avail. In terms of scientific truth, it's debatable, but if not incredibly unlikely that dogs are capable of forming some death wish or intent to die. And most dogs I know don't think that in that abstract of a term. I don't think it's just more tree, bark, plunge, throw the rope, throw the ball. Let's play. Yet something is luring dogs off that bridge, often from the very same spot, and always on sunny, dry days. Many theories have arisen, including that the bridge is haunted.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. A mink is marking the area with an almost irresistible scent. And a sound anomaly exists at the bridge that only dogs can hear.
Yeah, that's where the KGB was testing
I'm
it.
thinking the KGB might have been involved in this one too.
Before they went to Cuba and then China.
Whatever is causing this phenomena, dog owners would be wise to take heed and keep their dogs on leashes as they are nearing the bridge. Especially, or just stay off the bridge entirely if you have a large dog. He might pull you over with him.
Okay, so talking about architectural mysteries, here's one for you. The Georgia Guidestones. It's a granite monument erected in 1980 in Elbert County, Georgia. A set of 10 guidelines is inscribed on the structure in 8 modern languages, and a shorter message is inscribed at the top of the structure in 4 ancient language scripts. To describe the monument, here you go. There's 4 upright rectangular granite slabs that have words carved on them, spelling out a list of 10 instructions in 8 different languages. Those slabs centered around and radiate out from a central column slab. And then topping the whole thing, the whole 19-foot 3-inch structure is 1 square slab of granite lying flat on top of the column and 4 upright slabs. It's inscribed with a shorter message in 4 ancient language scripts. So a man going by the name of R.C. Christian commissioned the stone to be created and erected by the Elberton Granite Finishing Company on behalf of, quote, a small group of loyal Americans.
Oh, well, this sounds mysterious. Okay.
Yeah, it's really kind of weird. So he said...
This was in 1980, all right?
1980. So he said it was to function as a compass, calendar, and clock, and should be capable of withstanding catastrophic events.
Okay.
So the representative of Elberton Granite Finishing Company handling the arrangement thought Christian was a nut. And he quoted him an amount several times higher than it would normally cost in order to encourage the man to just leave.
Right.
But to his amazement, the quote was accepted, and so the project began to get underway.
All right. You got the money, we'll build it.
That's right. I mean, a 5-acre site was purchased from a local farmer who then was allowed to continue letting his livestock graze on the land.
Well, that was nice.
On March 22nd, 1980, the monument was unveiled before an audience variously described as between, and this is so weird, 1 and 400 people.
We're not sure how many showed up, but, there was a field in there.
Yeah.
So R.C. Christian later transferred ownership of the land and the Guidestones to Elbert County. So in case you were wondering what the message that was so important,
right,
as I have this transcribed on a very expensive monument.
In ancient languages.
Right.
In several languages, I have the list of guidelines here. They are, number 1.
Number 1.
Maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. 2, guide reproduction.
Okay. Wait a minute.
Oh, wait. Okay, do you need a moment?
500 million.
500 million.
500 million.
Maintain humanity under 500
million. That's around the whole world.
This is going to take forever.
Yeah, we kind of exceeded that.
We got like 7 billion on the planet already.
That's right. Okay, so
we need another COVID.
Yeah.
So just saying, this is a controversial thing. Okay.
Yeah, think?
All right, I got you. Yeah.
So number 2.
Or is that just the town?
Hush, Phil. Listen. Number 2. Guide reproduction wisely.
Well, if you're capping it at 500 million, seriously.
Yeah, okay.
Gotta talk to some Catholics, a few others.
Right.
Improving fitness and diversity, too.
Oh, yeah, you would throw that in.
Yeah, well, okay. One's got to be a doctor.
Right.
Number 3, unite humanity with a living new language. Okay. What's
Bitcoin.
That? 4, rule passion, faith, tradition, and all things with tempered reason.
Oh, boring.
Yeah, okay.
Boring.
This is going to be a boring planet.
Seriously, 500 million?
Phil's for anarchy. 5, protect people and nations with fair laws and just courts.
Okay,
6,
I can go for that one.
Yeah. 6,
okay, fine.
Let all nations rule internally, resolving external disputes in a world court. Okay, that makes sense.
Okay.
7, avoid petty laws and useless officials.
Oh,
okay. Sign me up for that.
Stop preaching and going to meddling now.
Oh, they're getting digging.
8, balance personal rights with social duties. 9, prize truth, beauty, love, seeking harmony with the infinite. And 10, be not a cancer on the earth, leave room for nature. And it repeats, leave room for nature.
Okay.
So the languages that these guidelines are written in are English, Spanish, Swahili, Hindi, Hebrew, Arabic, traditional Chinese, and Russian. R.C. Christian is understood by everybody. I mean, I think everybody accepted that it was a pseudonym. It was not the real name of the man. And the identity of the man behind the name is unknown, as is the real intention of the Stones.
Okay.
So, of course, there's tons of wild theories, KGB, involving conspiracies, everything else. Like that the message is a handbook to rebuild humanity after worldwide catastrophe.
Okay.
Like Armageddon or something.
Yeah. World War IV.
Or that the group behind the construction is the Rosicrucians, a mysterious and secret Christian order. But then you got the exact opposite, that many people say it was erected by sun worshippers or even devil worshippers.
Uh-huh.
One of the monument's most prominent conspiracy theorists says that the stones are there for establishing the beginnings of a totalitarian tribal government. Still another says that the stones call for culling of humans or the weeding out of the human race, much like
500 million.
500 million.
Yeah.
One out of every 20 of us now.
Right.
Yeah, maintain humanity and guide reproduction. That's right. Yeah, it sounds... Yoko Ono, however, really liked the message of the Stones.
I see.
But whatever...
She's responsible for breaking of the Beatles, so,
Yeah, right.
not to be trusted.
Whatever the case, the Stones stand in silence and will likely be standing for a long, long time.
Well, they're made out of granite.
Yeah.
Did the granite company get their money from them?
Right.
Yeah.
In advance, I would think.
The group paid for it, and that's right. So I got my info from Wikipedia and SmithsonianMag.com.
Wow. I'm still stuck on the 500 million thing.
Yeah, I know. It seems like paltry small somehow.
And then you're supposed to rule internally in your own state just fine, but for the world externally.
Yeah, I mean, some of this is kind of So, that makes
Okay. Yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
Getting a little personal about improving fitness too. Well, and he throws them in the same sentence: improve fitness and diversity. Those are two whole separate thoughts.
Right.
But they're on one little sentence there.
Yeah.
Well,
it's really odd.
Anyway, let's move on now to this is another kind of a sad one involving probably a storm. Just before Christmas in 1900, the steamship Archtor, Archtor, was approaching the coast of Ireland when the captain and crew noticed something strange. The lighthouse on Flannan Island was not lit. Upon docking, the Archtor's captain notified the authorities, who dispatched the lighthouse's relief ship, which was called the Hesperus, to investigate. The lighthouse was manned by a 3-person team: Thomas Marshall, James Ducott, and Donald MacArthur, with a 4th man rotating in from shore. On Boxing Day, December 26 of 1900, the relief keeper arrived to find none of the lighthouse's keepers present. The only sign in the lighthouse that anything was amiss was an overturned chair near the kitchen table. However, further investigation on the island found evidence of a massive storm. A supply box had been smashed open and its contents strewn across the ground, despite being over 100 feet above the sea level. Iron railings on the side of a path had been bent and twisted out of shape. Part of a railway track had been torn from its concrete moorings, and a large rock weighing more than a ton had been displaced. Turf had also been ripped up from the tops of the cliffs 200 feet above the sea level. There was no sign of the 3 keepers. The relief keeper conducted, quote, "Poor fellows, they must have been blown over the cliffs or drowned trying to secure a crane or something like that." Whatever happened back in December 1900 at the Flannan Isles Lighthouse, we may never know.
Aliens.
Yeah. KGB,
Yeah.
Actually, okay, so I just listened to another podcast. I listen to a lot of podcasts. One of them was about
You've been unfaithful.
And
Oh, wait, we record this one.
yeah, why would I listen to ours? I listen to ours before we release it. But one of the theories that's probably most accepted is a rogue wave.
Right. A large wave. Oh,
Yeah.
We talked about rogue waves on one of our other ones.
Yeah, because back then,
episodes.
when they were investigating this, sailors had said, they had seen rogue waves and things like that, but scientists hadn't accepted it yet. Because, they just weren't,
Right.
they're not that common. They only happen. And at that time, during the investigation of what happened, there had been maybe some weather, but nothing huge.
Yeah.
No big, huge
Nothing to cause
storm
that
or
kind of
anything.
a wave.
Right. And so a rogue wave would account for all of this. And
Could
if they
be.
were
It
outside
must have been very large to
Yeah. If they were trying to secure something, it could have just easily
pick them off. Yeah.
picked them off and taken them away. So anyway, so that's probably the most accepted theory of what happened out there. But it was very sad.
Well, now here's another story that involves the sea. On December 4th, 1872, a British-American ship called the Mary Celeste was found empty and adrift in the Atlantic. It was found to be seaworthy and its cargo fully intact, except for a lifeboat, which it appeared to have been boarded in an orderly fashion. But why? We may never know, because no one on board was ever heard from again. In November 1872, the Mary Celeste set sail from New York, bound for Genoa, Italy. She was manned by Captain Benjamin Briggs and 7 crew members, and also including Briggs' wife and their 2-year-old daughter. Supplies on board were ample enough for 6 months, and luxurious, including a sewing machine and an upright piano. Commentators generally agree that to precipitate the abandonment of a seaworthy ship, some extraordinary and alarming circumstance must have arisen. However, the last entry on the ship's daily log reveals nothing unusual, and inside the ship, all appeared to be in order. Theories over the years have included mutiny, pirate attack, and an assault by a giant octopus. What do you think about that, Sir Kraken?
Yeah.
I would have left a bigger mess.
Right, probably so. A little slime. In recent years, scientists have posed the theory that fumes from the alcohol on board caused an explosion that, as a result of a scientific anomaly, did not leave behind signs of burning, but was terrifying enough that Briggs ordered everyone into the lifeboats.
Huh.
But the truth is still unknown.
Wait. This was in
1872.
That's right.
So it was before the KGB.
Most likely.
The East India Company.
Right, the East India Company.
Right.
We'll leave it with
Hudson
them.
Bay.
Okay, so let's bring it back to a more modern mystery. This one has fascinated me for so long. In the 1980s. Okay, so have you ever heard of Toynbee tiles? Either one of you?
Think so.
Okay, so in the 1980s, tiles with perplexing messages started showing up on the streets of Philadelphia and eventually made their way to about 24 other American cities and even to South America. Believed to be constructed of linoleum and cracked sealant, the tiles are about the size of a license plate and are colorful. So these are known as Toynbee tiles, and their purpose and origin are mystery, as well as the person that's behind creating it. It's considered that, like, all the ones in Philadelphia are true Toynbee tiles.
Right.
But
everything else is a replica?
Well, they don't know. I mean, 'cause they don't really know, but they assume that they're copycats or whatever.
It's weird. They make them out of linoleum and crack sealant.
That's right. They're really odd looking, and we'll have a picture of it on our social media. But most of the tiles have odd sayings that allude to the Stanley Kubrick movie 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's whoever's behind this really is out there.
Right.
Okay. The film was based on the Ray Bradbury short story Toynbee Convector, about a time traveler who returns to the present to inspire his contemporaries to build a future for themselves. Many of the original messages on the tiles were simply,
Dave, what are you doing, Dave?
Okay, bring
Sorry,
it back
I couldn't
in.
resist.
But the messages are even crazier, okay? Toynbee idea in movie 2001, resurrect dead on planet Jupiter. Okay.
Okay.
So the original tiles all said the same thing, and then they started getting a little, they started to branch out and then imply a hatred for journalists.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Some of the tiles said things like "murder every journalist, I beg of you,"
Oh, brother.
and "House of Hades" tiles made from the ground bones of journalists.
Oh.
So this guy's got
That went a little
That's
nuts.
sick, yeah.
Yeah.
But those were all
Really
found in
sick.
Philadelphia.
Right.
So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Of course, in Philadelphia, they threw rocks at Santa Claus one year, so,
Oh, okay. There's a story for our Christmas. Anyway, The person behind the creation of the tiles has remained a mystery all these years. No one has ever seen a tile placed or knows exactly how it's done, but it's known that most tiles appear in the summer months. It's speculated that after a design is created, the tile is wrapped in tar paper with asphalt sealant on the bottom of it and maybe dropped through a hole in the floorboard of a car. And then as other vehicles drive over the tile, it fuses it to the pavement.
So it just sticks to the road.
Yeah, and then tears away the paper, revealing the message underneath it. And they last for years and years. Eventually they do wear away. There's been much speculation about the creator of the tiles, and the exact purpose behind them, but it's still a mystery. So it's been going on since the 80s. And I got my info from Atlas Obscura.
You know, it occurs to me the saying of the fine line between genius and insanity, because it was pretty intelligent how they made them to stick like that.
Yeah.
Right?
But
then the messages are so bizarre.
But maybe it's the dude with the guide stones. You know?
Right? Let's check this out. The other one didn't take so much. We hit over 500 million. Let's drop some rocks.
Right. Be simpler that way.
And now for something completely off topic and off kilter. Brace yourself for the oddity du jour.
All right, today for our oddity du jour. You know, Leah, next September, my wife and I, along with my sister and brother-in-law, we're planning a trip to Iceland, Norway, Sweden, and then Eastern and Southern Europe. Now, one of the things I'm really hoping to see while we're in Northern Europe is the Aurora Borealis, or the Northern Lights.
So jealous.
They look so fascinating. They just are, you know, the how they change and how they, you know, move around the sky, the different colors even. Conjured by the interaction of solar particles with gas molecules in the Earth's atmosphere, the aurora generally occur near Earth's poles, where the magnetic field is the strongest. Though they have been seen as far south as Ohio and Illinois, the most common sightings are in the higher latitudes, nearer to the north, and yes, to the South Pole. They also can be seen near the South Pole.
Right, but nowhere near Texas.
No, not here. Alaska, Canada, Northern Europe, and Russia are areas where the lights are most commonly seen. But did you know that there are numerous reports that the Northern Lights also actually make noise?
They have a song?
They have made a composer has made some songs out of the noise that they.
I had no idea they made any noise.
It's been debatable for a long time whether they actually do.
Is it those crickets again?
It's like it could be. Auroral noise was the subject of a particularly lively debate in the first decade of the 20th century, when accounts from settlements across northern latitudes reported that sound sometimes accompanied the mesmerizing light displays in their skies. Witnesses told of a quiet, almost imperceptible crackling, whooshing, or whizzing noise during particularly violent northern light displays. In the early 1930s, for instance, personal testimonies started flooding into the Shetland News. That's the weekly newspaper on the Shetland Islands, which are between the United Kingdom and Iceland in the North Atlantic Ocean. And the report said the sound was like rustling silk, or like two boards with the flat ends rubbing against each other.
Huh.
Reports of the aurora making a noise are rare, and they were historically dismissed by scientists. Some of their skepticism is based on the fact that the lights occurs at least 50 miles above the Earth's surface. Scientists believe that the sound could not possibly travel like far, similar to seeing a high-flying jet so high up you can see it, but you can't hear it. It's too far up for the sound to be heard. Nevertheless, 20th century accounts written by two astronomers claim to have heard the aurora. That added some legitimacy to the large volume of personal reports. An overlooked study from 1923 by a well-known Canadian astronomer named Clarence Chant was recently rediscovered and has given further substance to the possibility of northern light sound. According to Chant, the motion of the northern lights alters Earth's magnetic field, inducing changes in the electrification of the atmosphere, even at significant distances. This electrification produces a crackling sound much closer to the Earth's surface, where it meets objects on the ground, much like the sound of static. This could take place on the observer's clothes or even their spectacles, or surrounding objects, including fir trees or the sides of buildings. chance theory is largely accepted by the scientific community today, although there's still debate as to how exactly the mechanism for producing the sound operates. But a Finnish study in 2016 claimed to have finally confirmed that the Northern Lights do really produce sound audible to the human ear. One of the researchers involved in the study captured a sound possibly made by the captivating lights. This was estimated to have originated about 230 feet above the Earth's surface. And I actually have that here, if I can get it on my phone. Here we go. Oh, it was playing when it was not supposed to be playing.
Oh, that's interesting.
So it's a staticky kind of sound with a little bit of a whooshing with it. So
It sounds alien.
yeah, it does sound alien, doesn't it?
KGB.
And I wonder if like animals and dogs can hear it a whole lot better than humans can.
Well, another account I saw was quoted a lady who lives in northern Alaska, said that she, when she has heard it, the dogs and even a wolf pack in the area start howling at the time that they hear it.
Oh, wow.
If you want to hear the Northern Lights for
Turn
yourself,
the sound down. We're trying to sleep.
well, you may have to spend a considerable amount of time in a polar region, considering the auroral phenomenon only presents itself in 5% of violent auroral displays. It's also most commonly heard on the top of mountains surrounded by a few buildings. It's not really an especially accessible experience. Now, the info I found came from an October 4th, 2021 article on BBC.com by Fiona Amory titled "The People Who Can Claim to Hear the Northern Lights." So,
cool.
They're speaking to me.
That's right.
And now for something really smashing.
In 2008, Clint Eastwood's film Changeling reawakened interest in one of the most bizarre and tragic crime stories of the 1920s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Single mom Christine Collins reported her 9-year-old son Walter was missing in March of 1928 from their home in Los Angeles. 5 months later, police brought, quote, Walter back to Christine, except it wasn't Walter. And Christine knew it. But the Los Angeles police dismissed Christine's concerns, going so far as to accuse her of terrible mothering and having her committed to a mental hospital.
Wow.
Well, okay, so I watched that movie and I looked into it. They were under a lot of pressure at that time to solve it, right?
To find somebody, yeah.
So they solved it.
So to speak,
you know,
on purpose.
Right.
Yeah.
Or forcefully.
The real Walter Collins was never found, and over time, authorities came to believe he was one of the victims of convicted child murderer Gordon Stewart Northcutt, although Northcutt's mother actually offered a confession to killing Walter herself. Whatever happened to Walter Collins, his body was never found, and no one ever learned what really happened, nor has it been established with any certainty why the police were so invested in covering up the boy's disappearance that they brought a different child back to Christine and tried to convince her and the rest of the world that it was Walter.
And the child that he's Walter.
Yeah, and it tried to convince her, tried to coerce her into believing it.
Right.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I remember that movie. It was
this
sad.
is your kid.
Well, this is your kid, and you're going to accept it, or we're going to have you put into a
Locked up,
mental
yeah.
institution.
This is your kid.
You're a bad mother. What's the matter with you? Yeah.
Oh, okay. So this one's weird and about a crying boy. So it kind of relates, right? Beginning in the 1950s, hush. Beginning in the 1950s and running through the 80s, there was this really odd, home decor trend of having a painting of a crying child. I remember this. I can
remember seeing them, yeah.
Yeah, sure. I remember going into we didn't have one in our home, thankfully.
No, we didn't either.
But I remember going to my friends' homes and stuff like that, and seeing this on the wall.
Kind of like the naked baby angel thing.
Yeah, you know.
Just as weird.
We always do weird stuff. Anyway, so the original painting, The Crying Boy, was a mass-produced print of a painting by Italian painter Giovanni Bragolin. There were many other versions, some of which even featured a girl, but they all depicted a crying child with these large, sad eyes.
Right.
The paintings were very popular, sold in many department stores, and hung in homes both in America and in the UK. So inevitably, some of these homes caught fire and burned down, right?
Uh-huh.
I mean, so, because on the
known to
odds,
happen, yeah.
Yeah, it happens. So, but it was noted that in every case, the crying boy painting was almost always intact.
That's strange.
In many cases where a home was burned completely to the ground and all was lost, there would be among the ashes the sooty but unburned painting of a crying boy or girl. So that was kind of eerie, to say the least, right?
Yes.
And so quoting from Atlas Obscura, quote, on September 4th, 1985, British tabloid The Sun, tabloid is the key word here,
Right.
Published Blazing Curse of the Crying Boy Picture.
Sounds legitimate to me.
A story about a very unlucky painting that caused fires, supported by the comments of a local fire station officer. These paintings, the firefighters said, turned up mysteriously unscathed in fires across the UK, all of which started spontaneously. Right. It is well known.
Hey, Sparky.
It was
well known, yeah.
Yeah, it was well known. He would never think of owning this cursed painting himself.
Right.
The couples had laughed off warnings that their painting was cursed, wrote The Sun. Let all others heed the warning and get rid of their own giant paintings of crying children immediately. Thus the legend of the curse of the crying boy began.
That's crazy.
Eventually, a backstory was created for this, saying that one of the urchins the artist painted was a boy named Don Bonillo, who accidentally started a fire in which his parents died in Spain.
And it was captured within the painting, and he's haunting it forever.
Well, yeah. So from then on, wherever the boy went, a fire followed, prompting his nickname, Diablo.
The fire starter.
It's not a subtle story, okay? Some believe the boy was adopted against the will of a priest and abused by the painter. And in the 1970s, the boy was consumed by fire as well in an explosion caused by a car accident.
Wow.
Yeah.
Couldn't we just left it at aliens?
Yeah.
But there were skeptics, There were skeptics. And they would go on to dispute all of this, citing that there was absolutely no record of anything like that ever happening. Finally, someone tried to deliberately set a crying boy painting on fire, but try as they might, they couldn't make it take a flame. The only thing they could burn was the string on the back that would hold it, to the wall.
Painted on asbestos, I guess.
Right?
Well, here's the deal. So further investigation revealed that this mass-produced painting was actually covered in a fire-retardant varnish.
I see.
There you go.
But why ruin a good story with trivial facts?
Whatever.
Yeah.
The curse is very widely known. The debunking, not so much.
Yeah.
And so, of course, I got my info from Atlas Obscura.
I love that.
The mystery here is really why it was so popular.
Right?
Yeah, well, I remember seeing the crying boy, and I've ever seen crying clown paintings also.
Those are creepier.
Yeah.
Very creepy.
Yeah, give me a crying boy any day.
Well, now again, back to the Lauren Kahn article that we mentioned at the beginning. There's a couple more really mysterious things. This one's called The Big Gray Man. The Big Gray Man is an inhuman creature that is said to haunt the summit and passes of the second highest peak in Scotland, which is called Ben Macdui. In the native Scottish tongue, the creature is known as Amphir.
We all call him Steve.
That's right. Like the Yeti of the Himalayas and Bigfoot, also known as Sasquatch of the American Pacific Northwest, the Big Gray Man has been seen by few eyewitnesses. What makes the Big Gray Man particularly frightening is that his physical characteristics don't resemble that of a bear, and thus sightings can't be dismissed as bear sightings. Those who have seen the Big Gray Man describe it as extremely tall, over 10 feet, and human-like with short hair, broad shoulders, and long arms.
It sounds like our Slender Man.
Yeah, it could be. Nearly all reports of sighting include the sound of gravel crunching beneath footfalls. Scientists haven't been able to come up with an explanation for the sightings and the accompanying sounds, although psychologists have proposed that those who have supposedly seen and heard the Big Gray Man have been in a state of physical and mental anguish brought on by exhaustion and or isolation. And I'd like to throw in perhaps the availability of Scotch whiskey may have been as well.
I'm thinking physical and mental anguish brought on by seeing something like
Big
that.
Gray Man.
Yeah, the Big Gray Man.
Big Gray Man, yeah.
Was there a UFO sighting there? Just asking.
Scotland is full of myths and legends. We could do
Loch Ness.
We could do half a year shows just on that, I think.
Road trip. We need to go.
Exactly. I love Scotland.
That'd be fun.
Now, this one you may be a little
We just have to tell my wife it's still Texas.
Right. It's a bigger state. In 1587, John White led a group of people from Britain to found an English colony settling on Roanoke Island, one of a chain of Berry Islands now known as the Outer Banks of North Carolina. White left for more supplies, but on his return 3 years later found the colony meticulously abandoned, with all houses and fortifications dismantled with care. Before he'd left the colony, White had instructed the colonists that if they were taken by force, they were to carve a cross into a nearby tree. I'm not sure they would have time to do that, but okay. But there was no cross. The only clue was the word Croatan.
I think it was Croatoan.
Croatoan, yeah, that's right. Croatoan, you're right. The name of a native tribe allied with the English, which was carved into a post. White took this to mean that the colonists had moved to Croatoan Island, now known as Hatteras. Ensuing investigations turned up claims that the colonists had been slaughtered by the Powhatan tribe, but there's no archaeological evidence to support this. And a recent re-examination of the primary sources indicates that any massacre that occurred was not of this particular group of colonists, but rather a group of colonists who had arrived earlier. More enduring theories involve integration between the colonists and integration. Yeah, that would be better.
Yeah, let's integrate.
More likely, not interrogation. I was reading them myself, and I think that didn't make sense. Let's try that again. More enduring theories involve integration between the colonists and the Croatoans or other local tribes, but so far, no DNA evidence has positively identified any descendants of the colony. So what happened to the Roanoke colony, nobody knows for sure.
Yeah, that's been a long time.
Rogue wave.
Long time mystery. Okay, so I've got one. The Poe toaster.
Poe toaster.
And that makes me think of like a toaster that you put, bread in. It comes out with a profile of Edgar Allan Poe. But anyway.
Poe toaster.
But that's not what I'm talking about.
Okay.
The Raven.
Edgar Allan Poe was born January 19th, 1809, and died at the age of 40 on October 7th, 1849. Since his popularity as a writer came mostly after he passed away, there was a movement to commemorate his grave, and his remains were moved to a more prominent location.
So you mean he didn't really enjoy his fame?
No, he really didn't. I mean, he was known as a writer. He got some kind of local fame or whatever, but no, he was not considered. He kind of died poor. He was poor.
Okay.
But anyway, so they moved his remains to a more prominent location once they came to the idea of we want to claim. Edgar Allan Poe is here. So there's a stone at the original burial site as well as the place he's currently buried. And I think that's called a cenotaph when there's a stone, commemorating somebody that's not actually buried right there.
I was first here. Now I'm not.
Yeah. That's right. So sometime in the 1930s, it was noticed that each year a mysterious figure dressed all in black would visit Poe's original burial site in the early morning hours of January 19th, Poe's birthday. He, assuming it was a man, would then pour a glass of cognac, raise a toast, then leave 3 red roses along with a bottle of liquor at the monument. Oh. Several of the cognac bottles are kept at the Edgar Allan Poe House and Museum in Baltimore. On several occasions, this mysterious Poe toaster, as the figure was named, left notes behind along with the roses and cognac. In 1999, a note announced that the original toaster had died the previous year and had passed the tradition on to a son. Oh, okay. The crowd, because people would come out to see this guy and to observe his tribute, right? So the crowd that came out to view the Poe toaster after that year commented that the figure did look to be younger. In 2010, a crowd gathered as usual to witness the Poe toaster perform his annual tribute, but were disappointed when no one showed up. Oh. It seems that 2009 was the last time the Poe toaster made an appearance. A man who had witnessed every visitation from 1976 on speculated that if the toaster intended to end the tradition, 2009 bicentennial of Poe's birth would mark a logical ending point.
That would make sense. Okay.
So
we've carried this on long enough now.
Right. In the many years since, Many fake toasters, also called faux toasters, I love that, have shown up. And one year there was as many as 4 at once.
Hey, it was my day. No, it's not.
But the original has never returned, and his identity has never been figured out. Isn't that cool?
He moved to Albuquerque.
Toaster copycats.
Faux toasters.
Well, now back to Lauren Kahn's article. A couple more pieces. Let's look at in 1976, residents of Circleville, Ohio, began receiving hate mail that has wreaked havoc ever since.
Okay.
The letters were postmarked from Columbus, Ohio, and they are invasive and accusatory, highlighting a supposed affair between a school bus driver, Mary Gillespie, and the school superintendent.
Which happened to be true. I did know about, I know about this, and it did happen to be true.
One letter addressed to Mary's husband, Ron, threatened his life if he didn't put a stop to the affair. By 1977, the husband was dead, the result of a suspicious one-car crash involving shots fired. Mm-hmm. When the sheriff ruled the death an accident, however, residents began receiving letters accusing the sheriff of a cover-up.
Somebody was a real busybody.
Yeah, really. The letters continued.
Shots fired. Yeah. Single car accident. Not suspicious. Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
The letters continued throughout the 1970s and early 80s, even after Ron's sister's husband, Paul Freshour, was convicted of writing the letters and attempting to murder Mary via a booby-trapped rigged pistol.
This town was really, a Peyton place. It was there's a lot going on.
So everyone was related? Just asking for a friend.
But even with Freshour in prison, however, the letters continued. Well, you could still send letters from prison, but you could sneak them out with somebody else who would mail them for you. That happens. He even received one himself. Well, there's your perfect cover right there. Oh,
mail it to yourself.
I got one. Look, I got one. Yeah. In 1994, Freshour was released, and he maintained his innocence until his death in 2012. The true identity of the Circleville letter writer remains unknown. Some still believe it was Freshour. Others believe it was Mary herself, and that she used the letters to concoct and support the perfect murder of her own husband.
Dun, dun, dun.
Anyway, nobody's heard from the school superintendent either, I don't think so.
He shall forever be nameless.
Right. Now, this last one from Ms. Kahn's article is quite mysterious, and yet everybody has heard about this one. This was just 7 years ago. Let's see, it was on March 8th, 2014. Malaysia Airlines Flights 370 took off from Malaysia, flying to China in a Boeing 777, carrying 239 passengers and crew members, and seemed to have vanished into thin air. The multinational search effort, the largest in aviation history, has turned up a mere 20 pieces of aircraft debris. The Prime Minister of Malaysia has declined to comment, other than to say that the aircraft disappeared over the Indian Ocean. The lack of closure has engendered multiple theories, many of which are considered, quote, conspiracy theories, which, according to Harvard professor Cass Sunstein, are a natural product of, quote, horrific and disastrous situations, because such events make people angry, fearful, and looking for a target. Theories including hijacked, captured by the United States, crew suicide. It was reported that the pilot was having marital problems. A fire aboard the aircraft, vertical entry into the sea, a meteor strike, and even alien abduction.
Yeah.
It's got to be aliens. Yeah. I vote alien.
Yeah, I think you're right. Notwithstanding the passage of 7 years and the expenditure of $160 million scouring thousands of square miles of the ocean, the disappearance of Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 and the 239 people aboard remains a mystery.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so I've got the last story, and I found this one so interesting. Sometime in the late 19th century, a body of a young woman was fished out of the Seine River in Paris. Because there was no obvious sign of death, the coroner determined that she had taken her own life, which was somewhat common at that time. In those days, when an unidentified body was recovered, it was laid on a marble slab and propped up against the morgue window for the public to view.
Oh, that sounds like a fun walk down the street.
At that, it was in that time of,
right.
A lot of
fascination with death.
Yeah,
right.
fascination with death and seances and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, but it was in the hope that somebody would recognize it.
Right.
So no one was found to have known the woman, but passersby were entranced with her beauty. She seemed to be kind of slightly smiling, sort of like Da Vinci's Mona Lisa.
Right.
The pathologist at the morgue was also entranced by her. In fact, he decided to make a plaster mold of her face, a death mask. Before long, copies of the cast of the woman's face began appearing in shops throughout Paris, and it became vogue and fashionable to have this mysterious woman's face hanging on a wall.
Wow.
So, she just, went everywhere.
Right.
And it was said that young girls modeled their looks after her and all kinds of stuff. It was really interesting. So fast forward several years or decades to the 1960s, and a man named Asmund Lertle was approached by Peter Safar, an Austrian doctor who had pioneered the CPR technique, to make a training aid for the newly invented procedure. Lertle nearly lost his son to drowning a few years earlier, so he was really eager to be a part of this project.
Okay.
He designed a realistic female doll, and when designing the face, he chose, for whatever reason, to model it after the death mask of the unknown woman of the Seine. She was also a drowning victim after all.
That makes sense, yeah.
Right.
The doll is one of Lertle's best-known medical products and is used widely even now, throughout the world to train medical students in the technique of mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. So if you've ever taken CPR, those dummies, their face is modeled after that woman.
Really?
Okay.
And so it's prompting some to call the mysterious woman the most kissed girl on earth.
Oh, well, okay.
So I got my info from mentalfloss.com and amusingplanet.com.
Okay.
What are you going to say, Phil?
Well, I always heard it called resuscitani,
Yeah, that's that's the name of it. Resusci Ann, I think.
Resusci Ann. Okay, maybe that's it. I probably had it wrong.
All right.
And now it's time, boys and girls, for the Trivia Challenge.
All right. Now we've reached the much anticipated Trivia Challenge.
Okay, so we have an answer to our Trivia Challenge question on our Curiously Interred
who did it?
episode. Tom Gregg.
Oh, good old Tom.
Go Tom.
And he had answered he had gotten the answer for the Abandoned Places episode as well as Runes and Ciphers. But the question
Tom did a double?
Well, now this is a triple.
Triple Tom.
Triplet.
Good job, Tom. Thank you.
The question is, where in the world is it customary to be buried in coffins shaped like fish, shoes, or cars? And he had the right answer, and it was Ghana.
Ghana?
Yeah.
I would have never thought that.
Is that owned by a monopoly?
I don't know.
Oh, my goodness. But I have to say this. Okay, so
Parker Brothers.
I have a note
Brothers
here.
show.
I have a note here from Tom Gregg. So I sent him a little something
Right.
for getting the answer correct. And he says, "Dear Remnant Stew, thank you so much for the socks, stickers, and the travel bug." I sent him a travel bug because he's a geocacher.
Oh, nice.
One of our Release the Kraken bugs. He says, "I'm looking forward to taking the tracking bug to some interesting geocaches. Keep up the good work with your great podcast. I love listening. Sincerely, Tom Gregg." So we really appreciate you, Tom.
Very good,
That's
Tom.
awesome.
Very good, Tom. You know how this works. Like and follow our Facebook page at Remnant Stew Podcast. Like and share this episode post. Put your answer to the trivia challenge in the comments of that post. The first person to do all that will be the winner and will be mentioned in an upcoming episode of Remnant Stew. So, Leah, what is the question today?
Okay, so these mysterious formations baffled scientists for years and produced a lot of wild theories as to why they were created, one of which involved ancient aliens. So there you go, Phil.
Woo-hoo.
Recently, it was been discovered that the formations were actually merely pointing out water sources. So what are they?
Traffic patterns?
Well, they were considered at one time to be traffic patterns for aliens.
Okay.
Land here.
Yep.
Okay.
Remnant Stew is created by me, Leah Lamp. Dr. Stephen Meeker and I research, write, and host each episode, along with commentary and dad jokes by Philip Sinquefield.
That's me.
Our audio is also produced by Phil. Our
Yay.
theme music is by Kevin MacLeod with voiceover by Morgan Hughes. Special thanks to Judy Meeker and Harbin Gould. You can connect with us through our Facebook and Instagram, and if you have an idea you'd like to hear us cover in a future episode, you can email us suggestions or just say hi at staycurious@remnantstew.com.
We love to hear from you. Now, before you go, please hit the follow button so you won't miss an episode. Head over to iTunes and leave a review. It means the world to us.
Absolutely.
Share Remnant Stew with your friends, your family, and that weird guy on your bowling league. And until next time, remember to choose to be kind and always stay curious.